He left her years ago. Now he found her at a crosswalk with twins he never knew existed. Before we begin, I'd love to know something. Where in the world are you listening from? Tell me in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy stories like this, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And tell me in the comments what you think about this story when it's over. I really love reading your thoughts. The red light wasn't supposed to matter. It was just another intersection in a city Ethan Caldwell had mastered, another pause between places that bent to his will. His life moved in controlled accelerations, meetings, acquisitions, flights, announcements. He didn't stop unless there was profit in stopping. Yet here he was, foot on the brake, engine humming quietly, glass and steel reflecting the last orange streaks of sunset. Beside him, Vanessa adjusted her seatbelt and glanced at her phone. Her engagement ring caught the light, scattering tiny flashes across the dashboard. "You're really quiet tonight," she said, not looking up. "Still thinking about the merger?" Ethan nodded, though his thoughts were already drifting. "It's just been a long day." She smiled. "Well, it's almost over. Dinner, wine, and then you promised you'd actually sleep." He exhaled through his nose, the ghost of a smile appearing. "I promised I'd try." The traffic light ahead glowed red. Pedestrians gathered at the corner waiting for the signal. That's when he saw her. At first, his mind rejected the image entirely. It treated it like a glitch, a trick of exhaustion, a coincidence too cruel to be real. But his body knew before his thoughts did. His chest tightened, his grip on the steering wheel stiffened. Across the street, stepping off the curb as the pedestrian light turned white, was a woman holding the hands of two little boys. She wore a simple coat, no makeup that he could see from this distance. Her hair, longer than he remembered, moved with the breeze in the exact same way it always had, tucked behind one ear when the wind pushed it forward. That small, unconscious gesture hit him like a punch to the ribs, because he knew it, because he had loved it, because he had once watched her do that every morning while she made coffee in a cramped apartment they both pretended was temporary. "Ethan?" Vanessa asked. "The light?" He didn't hear her. The woman's face turned slightly, catching the light. Lena. His heart slammed so hard he felt dizzy. 7 years. 7 years since he'd last seen her standing in front of him, eyes wet, voice steady, telling him she couldn't keep waiting for a man who was always almost ready. 7 years since he'd walked away without turning around. The twins walking beside her were laughing about something, one pulling slightly ahead, the other dragging his feet. Lena tightened her grip automatically, a mother's reflex. Ethan's breath caught. The boys, they were maybe 6. Maybe 7. Dark hair. Same shade as his. One had his eyes. There was no mistaking that deep-set intensity, even in a child. The other had his mouth, the same serious line that only softened when he laughed. The world tilted. This wasn't coincidence. This was consequence. The crosswalk felt unbearably long. Each step Lena took toward the other side felt like time folding in on itself, past colliding violently with present. She looked up. Their eyes met. The recognition was instant and devastating. Her steps faltered for half a second, just enough for him to see the shock flash across her face before she buried it beneath something colder, harder, pain, sharpened by years of silence. The light behind Ethan turned green. Cars honked. Vanessa turned toward him, confusion creeping into her voice. "Ethan, go!" He couldn't move. The twins reached the curb. Lena guided them onto the sidewalk, her grip firm now, protective. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She turned away. Something inside Ethan broke loose. "I need to stop," he said suddenly, his voice unfamiliar even to himself. "What?" Vanessa frowned. "Why?" "We're blocking traffic." "I saw someone." Before she could question him further, he pulled the car to the side of the road and opened the door. "Ethan!" Vanessa called, startled. "What are you doing?" But he was already out of the car, already crossing the street against the flow of traffic, ignoring horns and shouts, his pulse roaring in his ears. "Lena," he called. She froze. For a moment, she didn't turn. Her shoulders stiffened as if bracing for impact. Slowly, she faced him. Up close, she looked different. Stronger, maybe. Life had carved lines around her eyes, not from bitterness, but from endurance. She looked like someone who had learned how to stand alone. "Don't," she said quietly. The twins looked up at him, curious, unafraid. "Mama?" one of them asked, tugging at her coat. "Who is that?" Ethan swallowed hard. His mouth felt dry. "I didn't know," he said, the words tumbling out raw and unfiltered. "Lena, I swear I didn't know." Her lips pressed together. "You didn't want to know," she replied. "That's not true. You left," she said, voice steady. "You chose your career, your future. You made it very clear there wasn't room for anything else. I didn't know you were pregnant." Her eyes lifted to his, sharp and unyielding. "I tried to tell you." The street noise faded. Time collapsed inward. He remembered that night now. The argument, the raised voices, his phone buzzing with emails while she stood in front of him, hands clenched, trying to say something important. He remembered saying, "I don't have time for this right now." He had been right. He hadn't. "Are they?" His voice broke. He didn't finish the sentence. "Yes," she said. "They're yours." The words landed with a finality that stole his breath. Behind him, Vanessa stood on the sidewalk, watching, her confusion curdling into something darker. Ethan glanced back once, at the woman he was supposed to marry, at the life he was supposed to have, then looked at the boys again, and for the first time, all his wealth felt meaningless. "I'm getting married," he said weakly, unsure why he said it at all. "I know," Lena replied calmly. "It was everywhere." One of the twins tugged her sleeve. "Mama, can we go?" She knelt, brushing his hair back gently. "Yes, sweetheart." She stood again, meeting Ethan's gaze one last time. "That," she said to the boys, pointing subtly toward him, "is someone from a long time ago." She took their hands and walked away. Ethan didn't follow. He couldn't. Because some truths hit so hard, the only thing you can do is stand there and let them shatter you. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. Vanessa demanded answers. He gave fragments, half-truths, silence. Nothing could explain the way his entire sense of self had been rewritten in a crosswalk. After she stormed out, he stood alone in the penthouse, staring down at the city that had once felt like proof of his success. Now it felt like a monument to everything he had missed. He poured a drink and didn't touch it. His mind replayed the past with cruel clarity. Lena in their tiny kitchen, barefoot, smiling, despite the cracks in the walls. Lena waiting while he worked late. Lena believing him when he said, "soon," and then Lena standing there that night, trying to say something, while he checked his phone. "I tried to tell you." The words echoed like an accusation. By morning, he had canceled every meeting. By noon, he had hired a private investigator. By evening, he had an address. The building was modest, brick, real, not glass, not steel, not untouchable. He stood outside the door longer than he meant to. When he knocked, it opened almost immediately. Lena looked unsurprised. "I knew you'd come," she said. The twins peeked around her legs. Ethan crouched slightly, instinctively lowering himself to their level, though he didn't know why. "I want to be part of their lives," he said. She studied him for a long moment. "You don't get to want," she replied calmly. "You get to prove." And that was when Ethan realized something terrifying. Building an empire had been easy. This might be the hardest thing he would ever do. Ethan learned quickly that wanting was easy. Showing up was not. The first weeks after that, knock on Lena's door felt like walking through a foreign country without a map. Every instinct he had sharpened in boardrooms, control, certainty, dominance, was suddenly useless. Children didn't care about power. They cared about presence. He came every afternoon at first, always on time, always with something in his hands, books, puzzles, snacks he wasn't sure were allowed. Lena accepted none of it with gratitude or hostility. She simply observed. Lucas was cautious. He watched Ethan with the quiet suspicion of a child who had learned early not to expect too much. Noah was the opposite, curious, unfiltered, asking questions that landed like small explosives. Why do you talk different than Mama's friends? Why is your watch so big? Are you rich like the man on TV? Ethan answered honestly when he could, carefully when he couldn't. He learned quickly that children could sense lies even when adults couldn't. The first time one of them scraped a knee while Ethan was there, he froze. Blood was something he understood only in metaphors: loss, risk, red numbers on a screen. Lena moved instantly, calm and practiced. Ethan watched, ashamed, as she cleaned the wound, whispered reassurances, kissed the skin like it was instinct written into her bones. That night, alone in his penthouse, Ethan broke. He sat on the edge of his bed, hands clasped, and for the first time in his adult life, he cried without trying to stop himself. He cried for missed birthdays he would never see in photos. He cried for bedtime stories never read. He cried for a version of himself that might have been good if he had stayed. Vanessa called 3 days later. "I need clarity," she said, voice controlled but brittle. "Are you choosing them?" Ethan closed his eyes. "I'm choosing responsibility." "That's not an answer." "It's the only honest one I have." Silence stretched. Finally, she exhaled sharply. "I won't compete with ghosts and children I didn't know existed." "They're not ghosts," Ethan said quietly. "They're real. So is the life we were building." He didn't argue. Some things end not with explosions, but with the quiet understanding that two paths no longer run parallel. When Vanessa left, the apartment felt emptier than it ever had, despite all its space. Ethan sold the engagement ring the next day and donated the money anonymously to a school fund in the Twins district. It didn't make him feel better, but it felt honest. The boys began to change slowly. Lucas started asking Ethan to help with homework. Noah insisted Ethan come to his soccer practices even when Ethan stood awkwardly at the sidelines in an expensive coat, clapping too loud at the wrong moments. Lena remained guarded. She allowed access, not intimacy. One night, after the boys were asleep, Ethan finally asked the question that had been burning in his chest. "Why didn't you tell me again?" "After I left." Lena didn't answer immediately. She poured tea, sat across from him, and studied his face like she was looking for something. "I called you," she said. "You never picked up." I emailed," she continued. "You replied once, said you were traveling. I didn't know. I sent a letter." That stopped him. "A letter?" She nodded. It came back unopened. His chest tightened. "I moved," he whispered. "I know." The silence between them thickened. "I told myself," Lena continued, "that if you wanted to know, you'd find out. And if you didn't, then maybe it was better this way." "Better for who?" "For the boys," she said firmly. "I refused to let them feel unwanted." Ethan nodded slowly, shame burning through him. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "I just want to be useful." Lena's eyes softened for the first time. "Then stay," she said. "Not with money, not with promises, with time." Months passed. Ethan rearranged his entire life. He stepped down from daily operations at his company, delegated, declined interviews, turned down a cover story that would have once thrilled him. The media speculated. Investors panicked. He didn't care. He learned how to make pancakes badly at first. He learned which bedtime story voices made Noah laugh and which ones Lucas tolerated politely. He learned how silence worked differently with children, how it didn't always mean distance. One evening, during a thunderstorm, the power went out. The boys froze. Noah started crying. Lucas tried to be brave, but his hands shook. Without thinking, Ethan sat on the floor between them, pulling them close. "It's okay," he whispered. "I've got you." Lucas looked up at him, eyes searching. "Will you leave again?" The question pierced straight through him. "No," Ethan said, voice breaking. "Not if I can help it. Not ever." Lena watched from the doorway, heart racing. That night, after the storm passed and the boys slept, she sat beside Ethan on the couch. "You're changing," she said quietly. "I have to." The central age, end quote. For them? For me, he admitted. For the first time, I don't want to win. I just want to be here. Hast. She studied him carefully. Being here is harder than winning, she said. I'm learning. The confrontation came unexpectedly. A reporter recognized Ethan outside the school one afternoon. Photos spread quickly. Headlines exploded. Billionaire hides secret family. Twin sons revealed after years of silence. Lena was furious. You promised to protect them, she said, pacing. Now they're exposed. I didn't call anyone, Ethan said desperately. I swear. I believe you, she replied. But belief doesn't undo damage, parents whispered. Teachers asked questions. The boys sensed the tension. Lucas withdrew. Noah grew angry. Ethan stood in front of his board that week and made the most expensive decision of his life. He resigned publicly. No spin, no strategy. I spent years building something impressive, he said at the press conference. And in the process, I missed what mattered most. I won't miss it again. The stock dropped. He walked away. Time slowed. Without the pressure of power, Ethan softened. One afternoon, Lucas finally spoke. Why did you choose work over us? Ethan knelt in front of him, eye level. Because I was afraid, he said honestly. Afraid that if I stopped, I wouldn't be enough. Lucas considered that. Are you afraid now? Yes. Good, the boy said quietly. So are we sometimes. Something shifted then. Not forgiveness, understanding. Years later, Ethan stood at another crosswalk. This time, there was no car waiting, no horns, just sunlight. Lucas and Noah were taller now, backpacks slung over their shoulders, arguing about music. Lena stood beside him, not behind, not ahead, beside. You know, she said softly, if you hadn't stopped that day. I know, Ethan replied. The light turned green. They stepped forward together. And for the first time in his life, Ethan felt rich in a way no headline could ever measure. Not because he had everything, but because he had stayed